Mystery at Blind Frog Ranch. The winds swept across the barren Utah desert as the sun began to vanish behind the red ridges of Blind Frog Ranch. The shadows stretched long and uneven across the cracked soil, and the faint echo of metal scraping against stone whispered through the canyon. Chad Ollinger had been working since dawn. His father, Duane, had warned him not to go alone. But time was slipping away, and the clues buried in the cavern beneath the ranch were too important to ignore. He stood beside the gaping maw of a newly revealed shaft, a vertical cut in the earth that seemed to breathe with an ancient chill. The sensors had been going haywire for days. Radiation spikes, magnetic field reversals, and that low hum that seemed to come from nowhere. Chad adjusted his helmet light and stared down into the darkness. Somewhere below, something shimmered faintly, like the reflection of water or metal. A rush of determination pushed away his hesitation. He tightened the harness, checked the cable winch, and began his descent. Descent into the unknown, the beam of light traced the walls as he moved down, revealing layers of sediment, mineral veins, and strange crystalline growths. The air thickened, moist and cold, and a faint smell of iron and ozone filled his mask. His radio crackled, static only. He had lost the connection to the surface. The cable trembled above him as the wind howled across the open mouth of the shaft, and for a brief second, it felt as if the ranch itself was breathing. A living organism of rock and secret history. 20 feet from the bottom, Chad spotted something unusual, a set of parallel grooves carved into the wall, perfectly straight, almost like man-made rails. He reached out to touch one, and an electric pulse ran up his arm. It wasn't enough to hurt, but it left a numb tingling in his fingertips. His instincts told him to stop. But curiosity, the same force that had driven the Ollinger family to chase gold, uranium, and legend, overpowered the warning inside him. The chamber beneath the earth, when his boots hit the cavern floor, the temperature dropped sharply. The light from his headlamp bounced off metallic reflections embedded in the rock, not just minerals, but something refined. He brushed away the dust and found a pattern, a grid of circular impressions, almost like ancient technology. He stepped further, scanning the area. The walls curved inward, forming a natural dome with black, glassy veins running through it. The diver counter at his hip started ticking faster, radiation levels climbing. But what drew his attention most was a massive slab in the center of the cavern. It wasn't stone, not entirely. It pulsed faintly, like something alive. Its surface was covered in carvings, symbols not unlike the Aztec patterns the team had found near the turtle-shaped landmark weeks before. Chad raised his camera, snapping pictures, his gloves trembling. The air seemed to hum louder with each step. He could feel static building on his skin. The lights on his equipment began flickering, his helmet lamp dimming until only the strange slab remained illuminated. Then, with a low rumble, the floor shifted. Trapped below the cable, above snapped taut. Something was pulling it, or cutting through it. Chad looked up in horror as the winch cable began to fray, sparks bursting from the tension. He dove away just as it snapped completely, the metal line recoiling into the darkness above. The sound of the cable whipping against the rock echoed endlessly. Chad was trapped. He steadied his breathing and looked around. The air had grown heavier, almost charged. Then, from the shadows, came movement. The slab in the center began to glow. Not a reflection, a radiance pulsing from within. The carvings illuminated one by one, forming a sequence that spiraled outward in concentric rings. The floor vibrated under his boots. Chad stumbled backward, eyes wide, watching the walls ripple as if the rock itself was softening. His flashlight died. Darkness swallowed him. Echoes of the past when his vision adjusted, faint light returned, greenish and spectral, rising from cracks in the ground. The slab was now open. A seam had appeared along its surface, revealing an interior chamber beneath. It was metallic, reflective, impossibly smooth, like the inside of a machine. Chad crouched low, trying to see inside. The temperature was plummeting. Frost spread across the rocks. His breath came out in visible clouds, and then a figure appeared. Not solid, but a projection. A silhouette flickering in the air like static. Its form was humanoid but elongated, with arms too long and head slightly tilted. It moved without sound. Chad froze, every muscle locked. The shadow turned toward him, and suddenly, a surge of white light filled the chamber, blinding him. He fell to his knees, gripping the cold ground. The hum turned into a roar, and a burst of magnetic energy exploded outward, knocking his gear sideways. The slab began to close again. Race against Tim adrenaline kicked in. He knew he had seconds before the chamber sealed shut. Crawling forward, he grabbed his flashlight, flickering dimly, and searched for another exit. The light caught a narrow passage leading deeper into the earth. He crawled through it, scraping against sharp stone and metallic shards embedded in the wall. Behind him, the rumbling intensified. Dust filled the air. The slab sealed completely with a deafening thud. The passage opened into another chamber, smaller but even stranger. It looked like a tunnel fused by heat. The walls melted smooth, and in the center was a pool, not water, but liquid metal, swirling slowly, reflecting distorted images of the ceiling above. Chad stood at the edge, mesmerized. He could see his reflection, warped and shifting, as if something below the surface were mimicking him. His heart pounded. The hum was back, deeper this time, resonating in his chest. A tremor shook the ground. The pool began to ripple violently, as if reacting to his presence. He stepped back. Too late. A burst of vapor erupted upward, enveloping him in a blinding mist. When it cleared, his surroundings were no longer the same. The hidden layer of the air smelled different, metallic and burnt. The ceiling above glowed faintly with lines of light running through it like veins. His instruments blinked erratically. Time, direction, even temperature readings made no sense. He looked back toward the passage. Gone. In its place stood a solid wall, smooth as glass. He reached out. It was warm to the touch, pulsing faintly beneath his palm. He was inside something, or somewhere, not meant to be found. Faint voices echoed through the chamber, but they weren't human. The sound resembled whispers recorded backward, layered and distorted. He pressed his hands over his ears, but the noise came from inside his skull. Then, a faint blue light appeared above the pool, a sphere, floating midair, spinning slowly. It projected a shape, a map. Chad recognized the contours immediately: the ranch, the canyons, the nearby mountain range. But the map showed something else: tunnels beneath the land, extending miles outward, converging beneath a point labeled only by a single glowing symbol, the same spiral carved into the slab earlier. It wasn't just treasure. It was something built, or buried, long before human hands ever touched this soil. Duane's search above ground, night had fully fallen. Duane Ollinger stood by the shattered winch, the cable dangling uselessly into the black hole below. He called Chad's name again and again, his voice breaking the desert silence. No response. Only the wind and the faint smell of ozone rising from the shaft. He ordered the team to prepare another descent. The sensors were still malfunctioning, registering electromagnetic surges strong enough to fry circuits. The ground vibrated slightly, and from deep below, a faint light glowed, then faded. Dwayne's face hardened. He knew this was no ordinary collapse. Something had awakened beneath the ranch. The final revelation deep underground, Chad stood motionless as the blue sphere expanded, engulfing the chamber in light. The air pulsed with waves of energy. His body felt weightless, pulled toward the pool's surface. He tried to resist, clawing at the ground, but gravity itself seemed to shift. The last thing he saw before being swallowed by the radiance was his reflection, no longer matching his movements, but staring back at him independently, smiling faintly. Then, silence. Above the ranch bidon, the ranch was eerily still. The equipment around the shaft was fried. Melted wires, cracked monitors, shattered tools. Dwayne and the crew searched through the night, but found no trace of Chad. Only his helmet remained. Lying a few feet from the closed shaft, its light still flickering weakly. The hum beneath the earth continued, steady and rhythmic, echoing like a heartbeat. The land itself seemed alive, and the shadows of the canyon walls looked like they were watching.